If you thought you wouldn't have to sweat your start-sit decision at quarterback or tight end by week 2, you might be wrong. A couple of big injuries, but also a lot of duds at both positions. So what do you do now? Don't worry, we're going to go over every matchup, talk about the QBs and tight ends you need to know about, tell you who to start or who to sit. At the quarterback position, these are still the guys that you have to start. Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Pat Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Anthony Richardson, and CJ Stroud. At tight end, Sam Laporta, Travis Kelce, Trey McBride, Dalton Kincaid, Evan Ingram, and yes, Mark Andrews, you can keep in your lineup. And before you go to set those fantasy lineups, don't forget to set your pick'ems for this coming week on Underdog. If you haven't tried it yet, this is still a great time to do that because new customers who sign up using promo code ENDGAME, you get this new customer special, Josh Allen just needing 1 yard on Thursday night. That's right, if Josh Allen just gets higher than 0.5 total yards on Thursday night, you win that pick and you just need to combine it with any other pick, which we're going to give you some of our favorite picks at RB in this video. You also still get 50% deposit match up to $1,000 in bonus cash if you sign up now. Just make sure you use code ENDGAME when you sign up on Underdog. Now on Thursday night, we're going to see Buffalo take on Miami. Of course, you're good with Josh Allen, and yes, you can still trust Dalton Kincaid. Now for Miami, you got Tua Tagovailoa. Pretty good game in week 1, but not always the best when he has to face Buffalo. Do you trust him this week?
Yeah, I trust him. He's at home. I mean, look, picking up right where he left off, leading the league in passing in week 1. The touchdowns weren't there. I mean, he had 1, but you'd like to see some more touchdowns. He's got enough upside. I feel like he's a strong start this week.
Well, I don't feel like much has changed with Tua. I mean, basically, if you're relying on him to start, it's either in a super flex league where he's a no-doubter, or you waited on quarterback, and he's probably just still in your lineup. So, low-end QB1. And then Jonnu Smith, the tight end there in Miami, really didn't show up in week 1. Probably can't have too much confidence in week 2.
Nope, not starting Jonnu Smith.
I mean, thought there was a path, but just doesn't look like they want to throw to the tight end at all. 49ers going to take on the Vikings. Guessing Brock Purdy might have some better luck here against the Minnesota defense instead of the Jets.
Yeah, last week, I mean, pretty much we were off Brock Purdy against the Jets, but this week I'm on Brock Purdy against the Vikings. I think this week he'll be much better. Brandon Ayuk should be out there way more this week, so again, not like a must start or anything, but if you're looking for a streaming option this week, he's a good start.
Right. I don't think I'll ever say Brock Purdy is a absolute must start. You probably didn't draft him as a top 10 quarterback. Maybe you did. But this week, if you got him, you can definitely trust him. Then at tight end, George Kittle. I mean, pretty quiet in week 1 as well, but should be fine in week 2.
Yeah, I feel like the 49ers passing game will be better this week. George Kittle, one of those guys. I can't really bench George Kittle if I have him because you never know when he will go off. So he's a strong start at tight end.
Agree. Borderline must start. I mean, it really depends on your league format, but no reason to doubt him in this matchup. And then, believe it or not, here we are with Sam Darnold as one of the best passers in week 1, but he's going to face the 49ers defense this week.
Yeah, I'm not doing it with Sam Darnold. I mean, super flex, maybe, but that's about it.
I mean, super flex, maybe, just because there are a few other quarterbacks I would rather have below him, but that's about it. Seahawks at the Patriots. What do you think about Geno Smith? He was okay in week 1. I guess he could be okay in week 2.
It's kind of how I always feel about Geno Smith unless he has an absolute smash matchup. Super flex only.
Yeah, I mean, I really thought this new Seattle offense would look a little more dynamic. I mean, he saved his fancy day with a rushing touchdown. Can't count on that again, so super flex only. And likewise, Noah Fant didn't really do anything different than before. I mean, any reason to be optimistic here?
No, I wasn't optimistic heading into the season. I'm not optimistic heading into week 2. I am not starting Noah Fant.
No, and neither am I. I mean, if you're streaming, you're searching for some help there, you can look elsewhere. And then we do talk about every starting quarterback, so Jacoby Brissett. What do you think?
I think probably the same thing I'm going to think pretty much every week, unless they play the Commanders, which they might, I don't know. But yeah, benching Jacoby Brissett.
Oh yeah, I think by this point we know what we're getting from him, and it's not fantasy goodness. Now the Giants do play the Commanders, and that means Daniel Jones against the worst pass defense in the NFL. Who wins this matchup? Is it Jones?
I don't know if I think we all lose this matchup, to be honest, but I cannot put Daniel Jones in my lineup. I don't care if it's the Commanders. I don't care if it's super flex. I can't do it. Like, if he goes off, he goes off. I can't do it.
I'm glad you said that, because there's no way anybody really should justify having Daniel Jones on their fantasy roster unless it's a super flex or a dynasty league. Don't start him. Now, Jaden Daniels, an interesting one. Looks pretty bad as a passer. Looked really good as a runner. What do you think he does in this matchup?
Well, not a tough defense, not nearly as tough of a defense as he faced last week, but I'll tell you what, this is fantasy, not real life, and that running upside is huge in fantasy. So if I punted QB and then took Jaden Daniels, I feel great. I'm just going to roll him out there again this week.
Well, I'll say this is why we call a guy like Anthony Richardson a must start, because it really doesn't matter almost how well he passes the ball. 1, 2 rushing touchdowns, that's good enough. So still a strong start, especially against the Giants. Now, Zach Ertz at tight end, yeah, he was the main guy, but didn't really do much. Do you think he gets more involved?
No, I mean, man, I thought he was like maybe a sneaky tight end start last week, and he was a trap. I'm not falling for it again. Nope.
Now, we really need to see Daniels evolve as a passer before we can trust any of these receivers, much less the veteran tight end. So you're going to have to sit Ertz. Chargers at the Panthers. Let's start with Justin Herbert. Given the fact that he's facing the Carolina Panthers, does he climb up to maybe QB1 status?
Definitely not QB1 status for me, even with this matchup, because the Chargers are just going to be able to run wild against this defense, and they're not going to need to throw. So, I mean, it's a good enough matchup where I think you can put him in a super flex league, but not in a 1 QB league.
Yeah, it's kind of how I'm feeling. I don't know really this whole season when I'm going to be really in on Justin Herbert, because they just want to run the ball. So, I mean, super flex, sure. But if you're streaming, you should probably look for more upside somewhere else. And then there's Bryce Young. I mean, obviously the progression didn't take place in week 1. Do we see anything that gives us hope this week?
I sure hope so, but at the same time, I'm not going to find out with him in my fantasy lineup. I don't care what format it is. I am not starting Bryce Young.
No. Look kind of like the same old thing. Let's give it a little bit of time, but on your bench.
Do you want to get advice from Pierre and myself at the tip of your fingertips? Start sit, waiver wire, trades, and more? Well, you can do all of this and more on our new app, Draft Lane. We have the ability to view your roster, waivers, and more to give you the right feedback to make the perfect choice. Download Draft Lane from the App Store or Google Play now to connect with Pierre and myself anytime, anywhere.
Saints taking on the Cowboys. These two teams lit up the scoreboard last week. Let's see if they can do it again. Could Derek Carr possibly have a multiple touchdown game in Dallas?
Probably not. He's probably going to have a 0 touchdown game now. And the Cowboys defense looked good last week on the road. I'm not starting Derek Carr. I mean, super flex, okay, I guess.
I will say, yeah, Superflex 2 QB leagues. I'll throw him in there because at least he's got some weapons. Hey, he's got an offensive coordinator that actually likes to have guys move around a little bit. But I'm not completely buying in here. Only Superflex 2 QB. And then the tight end, Juwan Johnson, did find the end zone last week. Is he on the streaming radar?
I mean, why not? He's got touchdown upside. He's involved in the offense. Yeah, as a streaming tight end, he's fine.
Yeah, I feel like he'll always be, we say a lot of times, if you're just looking for a tight end on the waiver wire, guy who could score a touchdown, that's Juwan Johnson, right? It's like touchdown or bust, but he could score a touchdown. Almost shockingly, Taysom Hill, quarterback / tight end, did not score a touchdown in week 1. Does he do it this week?
Maybe, but I don't care. I'm done. Okay, cool. Don't have to talk about Taysom Hill anymore. Not starting him.
Well, he's still going to have one of those games one of these days. Good luck predicting it. Let's save him for those bye weeks. Now, quarterback Dak Prescott, usually a pretty solid start. Do you feel good about him against this Saints defense?
Yeah, it's a better matchup. I mean, it's still a good Saints defense, but he's at home now, so I feel good about Dak Prescott. He's a strong start in all formats.
Yeah, always going to be a strong start. Hey, he was on the road against a really tough Cleveland defense last week, and he still looked good. Not going to be scared here. Dak Prescott, still a QB1. And Jake Ferguson was supposed to be a breakout this season. We'll see. It's been put on hold because he is now injured week to week. Does Luke Schoonmaker, the new starting tight end, do something that could replicate Ferguson's last season?
Maybe, but I don't want to find out in my fantasy lineup. I'm not starting him.
No, and I don't even know if anybody's really making a move to pick him up. Only in a deep dynasty league. All right, Colts and Packers. You definitely want to start Anthony Richardson. You probably don't want to start Malik Willis. That's my guess.
Yeah, really, it doesn't matter who the quarterback ends up being in Green Bay. I don't want to start them.
And then at tight ends, well, I guess Tucker Kraft is the starting tight end here now. Luke Musgrave kind of taking a backseat. Should we be in on Kraft?
Yeah, I would be really in on Kraft if Jordan Love was still playing, but with whoever the quarterback is, I'm going to pass on Tucker Kraft.
Yeah, I think you have to pass on the whole position, and unfortunately, a lot of the receivers as well. All right, Browns at Jags. What do we make of Deshaun Watson at this point?
I mean, if you watch the panic video, I said I'm done with this guy. Jags actually looked pretty good on defense. They're on the road. I'm not starting Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I think honestly, even in a super flex league, I'm not going to risk it. This Jags defense, I think, is better than people realize, and Deshaun Watson might just be worse than we all want to think. On the flip side, Trevor Lawrence looked good last week, gets a home game, but against a tough Cleveland defense.
Yeah, you can't feel great about him. I don't think I want to start him in a 1 QB league, but he's fine in that 2 QB super flex.
Agreed. Based on matchup, don't want to start him unless it's a 2 QB league. Jets are going to take on the Titans in week 2. On the plus side for Aaron Rodgers, he stayed in one piece. But the fantasy numbers were definitely not too good. Neither were the passing numbers or the final score. So, what do you make of Aaron Rodgers this time?
Can't feel good. I mean, Titans, they're not as good of a defense as San Francisco, but they're a decent enough defense on the road again. 2 QB super flex only.
That's pretty much how I feel all season. I just don't think that offense has enough weapons for him to be viable in fantasy. Low-end QB2. Now for Tennessee, Will Levis. You probably saw some of the highlights, or should I say lowlights from that game. Does he bounce back against the Jets?
Against the Jets? That's not a matchup I think like, oh yeah, bounce back spot. I'm not starting Will Levis.
No, I do think he'll get better. It's going to take time, and you definitely don't want to risk it here. Now tight end, Chig Okonkwo, maybe a forgotten man. Did find the end zone last week. Is he now somewhere on the radar?
I mean, he scored, so I guess that puts him on the radar, but Jets, Will Levis, I'm not starting Okonkwo.
No, definitely not. Again, we don't want to chase touchdowns. He'll make a big play here and there, but you can't count on that. Give me a guy like Juwan Johnson instead. Now, the Bucs taking on the Lions this week. Start with one of the better passers of week 1, which was a very low passing volume week in general for the NFL, but Baker Mayfield, almost 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now he gets the Lions. Too good to be true.
I mean, it's not as good as Commanders, but it's still a great matchup. You got to feel very good about Baker Mayfield. If you picked him up to stream him, he's a very strong streamer this week.
Well, I said he's one of the top pickers at quarterback, especially if you did lose Jordan Love, one of the top streamers. And you know what? Let's take it a step further. Talked about underdog and those pick'ems you can get if you sign up for the first time. You already get that free pick, right? Josh Allen getting 1 yard. Well, why not combine it with Baker Mayfield? Right now, his line is 250.5 passing yards. I mean, he could easily do this because remember, Detroit, one of the worst pass defenses in all the NFL. In fact, last season, they gave up the most passing yards by far. I'm going to take the higher there for Baker Mayfield. And if you do take that pick and you combine it with that Josh Allen pick as a new customer, that's a great way to earn a W. Just make sure if you're signing up for the first time on Underdog, you use promo code ENDGAME to take advantage of that. Now, Tampa still has Cade Otton at tight end. He wasn't really one of the guys that was involved last week. Does he do something against Detroit?
Cade Otton, tight end, wind sprint king, just out there running wind sprints all day, not getting any targets, not starting Cade Otton.
Yeah, another touchdown or bust guy that is more bust than anything, so probably shouldn't need to go there. And then what about Jared Goff? We're getting home Goff. That's usually a good Goff.
Yeah, we got home Goff last week, and it was just an okay Goff, so he's streamable in a 1 QB league, but I prefer him in a 2 QB Superflex.
Agree. I mean, bigger. St. Brown, Laporta, those guys, you might actually throw it to them this week. So he's always streamable. It's not a bad matchup. It's a low-end QB1. Raiders at the Ravens. Well, Gardner Minshew is the guy there. Is he your guy?
No, I don't think Gardner Minshew's ever been my guy. And on the road against the Ravens, not starting Gardner Minshew.
This is almost a nightmare scenario. I mean, even as Superflex, come on. Can we do better than this? Now, there was encouraging usage from Brock Bowers, the rookie unicorn at tight end here. Did you see enough that you could trust him in week 2?
I think so. I mean, how many tight ends get this kind of usage? So I think if you got Brock Bowers, he's a good start at tight end this week.
I mean, definitely risky based on the fact that it's a road game against Baltimore. But really, if you drafted Bowers, was it to be your backup? There are not too many tight ends you should have over him. Unless you got one of those must starts, then sure, roll with Bowers. And the big question here, well, we said you're still starting Mark Andrews if you got him. Are you starting Isaiah Likely after what he did in week 1?
I think so. I think we'll see enough 2 tight end sets here. And look, if you lost Njoku, Ferguson, or maybe you drafted somebody who looks terrible, you could do worse than Isaiah Likely. I think he's a definite streaming option at tight end this week.
Yeah, exactly. And look, injury, maybe you were streaming in the first place, fine. Get Likely, start Likely, but don't start him and sit one of those other guys. Dalton Kincaid had a bad week. Trey McBride didn't do much. Don't overreact. All right, Rams taking on the Cardinals. Got Matt Stafford there, but without Puka Nacua for a while. So you trust him this week?
I mean, he's still got Cooper Kupp. He looked good on Sunday night. I know he didn't have a huge fantasy game, but he had a good fantasy game. Cardinals defense doesn't scare me. I think Matt Stafford, another good streaming option this week.
Yeah, because look, as long as he's got one of those guys, he can still put up numbers. Maybe not the highest ceiling, but look, Matt Stafford is never going to be an elite fantasy quarterback anymore because he doesn't run. So he's definitely streamable if you need help or if you lost Jordan Love. And then does the tight end Colby Parkinson maybe benefit from some vacated targets?
He should. Had a pretty nice game on Sunday night as well. I think, again, you're looking for a streaming option at tight end. He's one of my favorites this week.
Yeah, I was a little skeptical, but of course, having Nacua out helps. And look, he actually showed a little bit something in the opener. So Parkinson, you need help. He might be one of your better options. And while it wasn't a great opening game for Trey McBride, you still got to keep him in your lineup. And then Kyler Murray, still a must start. Bengals going to take on the Chiefs in Arrowhead this week. Of course, you got Mahomes, Kelsey. Don't question it. You do definitely need to question Joe Burrow after what we saw last week. Is he even startable?
Oh, man, I'm not ready to just outright bench Joe Burrow. Maybe I'm a glutton for punishment. Maybe I don't know, but I'm still starting Joe Burrow even in a 1 QB league.
I'm willing to go there. In fact, I did last week. I benched him. I don't regret it. I'm definitely benching him. Against Kansas City on the road, no thanks. I need to see T. Higgins back and healthy. I need to see something to inspire some sort of confidence here. Now, maybe Mike Gesicki, the tight end, does benefit here. He almost had a touchdown. In fact, he had one that was reversed on replay last week. Could he be streamable?
I mean, I guess we can say he's got touchdown upside if he can catch. So streamable if you're looking for a boom bust touchdown kind of option.
Well, I've been there with Gesicki, and I'm not going back there either. If I don't trust Burrow, there's no way I'm trusting Gesicki, so I will pass. Steelers at the Broncos. This will be interesting to see. Does Justin Fields get another start? If that's the case, can you roll with him?
I think he's like low-end streamable option. In Superflex, definitely, but in 1 QB, like barely on the streaming radar.
I think he is a potential replacement for Jordan Love, or if you just waited on quarterback. Look, I prefer him to guys like Joe Burrow, to Justin Herbert, because he has that rushing upside, but I'm only starting him if I really need him in a 1 quarterback league. Then there's the fact that maybe Russell Wilson does start. He has not been ruled out for week 2. If he comes back and earns the start, what do you do with him?
I'm not starting him. I mean, he doesn't have that rushing upside of Justin Fields anymore. So in this offense, not starting Russell Wilson.
I mean, it is in Mile High, revenge game, but no. No thanks, Russell Wilson. I don't know if we're going to trust him ever again in fantasy. What about a tight end like Pat Freiermuth? You think he might get more targets given the state of this offense? Didn't really happen in the first game.
No, and I mean, like, again, he's a streamable option if you have to. Like, you lost Njoku, you lost Ferguson, there's nobody else, but don't love it.
Yeah, it just seems like the ceiling isn't really there. I mean, he's not the worst option, but also not the best. And in Denver, the quarterback is rookie Bo Nix. Showed some scrambling ability, but is that enough to even put him in the Superflex conversation?
No, against this Steelers defense, no chance I am starting Bo Nix.
And I have to agree. I mean, Daniel Jones, maybe this week, passes Bo Nix in my fantasy rankings. Yeah, that's where we're at. Bears at the Texans. Can Caleb Williams have a much stronger, strong enough to actually be considered in fantasy week 2?
I mean, he'll have a stronger one, I'm sure, but I don't think I'm ready to consider him in fantasy. Let me see it first. 2 QB Superflex, sure, but that's it.
Yeah, you gotta be worried, not so much about the way he looked or the fantasy points or whatever. That receiver room now is all sorts of banged up. Don't know if they have the weapons there. Caleb Williams, I mean, I like him better than several other quarterbacks, but only in a 2 QB Superflex. It doesn't look like either of those tight ends in Chicago are relevant for fantasy. Now, Dalton Schultz for Houston, is he relevant?
I mean, it doesn't really look like it. It feels like Dalton Schultz is going to be touchdown or bust this year. So, again, another guy, streamer, touchdown or bust.
Yeah, he's a guy I think is going to wind up being dropped eventually at some point. Doesn't look like he's got any advantage over several of these other tight ends. So, no reason to start him this week. And the good thing is with CJ Stroud, though, he's got enough receivers. You're definitely going to want to start him still. Falcons at the Eagles. Not the best debut in black for Kirk Cousins. Can he put up better numbers going against Philly?
I mean, maybe it's on the road. They're not as good of a defense as Pittsburgh, but also you can't be feeling good after what you saw last week. So not in the 1 QB league, 2 QB Superflex only.
Yeah, I'm concerned about his apparent lack of mobility in the pocket. Maybe not fully healthy. I don't know. He could put up numbers if they're really having to throw a ton against Philly, but I don't want to trust it in a 1 quarterback league. Then it may be a little too soon to say Kyle Pitts is an absolute must start, but the fact that he scored a touchdown and was kind of involved, is that enough to give you confidence?
I mean, it has to be. Like, one more game like that, and we're probably going to put him in the no doubt must start. So you got Kyle Pitts. He's a strong start this week.
Yeah, this is not a bad spot for him. If you got Pitts, you should just keep him in there. And of course, you're keeping Jalen Hurts in your lineup. What about his tight end, Dallas Goedert?
I mean, you got to feel pretty good. He was involved. He, at least seems like he has a floor for a tight end. He could always score. So I think definitely one of the better streaming options.
There you go. Definitely more floor than ceiling for him these days. But given the state of tight end these days, yeah, if you waited and you took him as your starter, you can just keep going with him. And if you need help at running back, wide receiver, or maybe help with waiver wire, trade suggestions, anything else, we got you covered. Check out the entire Week 2 playlist right here.